are strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk, dear Lord, close to Thee. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant it, Jesus, is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Through this world of toil and snares, if I falter, Lord, who cares? Who with me my burden shares? None but Thee, dear Lord, none but Thee.
Time and how important it can be. We have a story going on here about Daniel, who has read from the prophets that the time is at hand for them to return, but it's not immediate. And part of what God's doing here is helping Daniel understand that he has to be patient and he has to yet experience some things before this would happen. Now, by the way, it's getting very close to immediate, because if you remember the story, who was it that sent them back, that let them go back? It was Darius. So the time is close at hand, but there's still time before that happens. So that Daniel doesn't lose heart and begin to think that it's not going to happen, God gives him this information so he has something to mark the time with. Where that applies to us is we're waiting for the Lord's return, and there is a possibility of beginning to think, as the scriptures warn us, that what? He's not going to return. Where's the promise of his coming? And what is the message of Scripture? There's stuff going on. We're making progress. We're going to that day. It will happen as surely as God is. The things that God has said will come to pass. And so your job is to do what? Continue to live in the hope of these things. Continue to live like you believe they are true. Now, I don't like using the word like in there, because it leaves the impression that maybe you're living like it's true when you don't really believe it's true. That's not the way I'm using that. Live like it's true. I'm using that in the sense of, you know, it's true. So now live with that knowledge. So the things that I do reflect that belief. And so if I believe the resurrection is coming, by the way, the church at Corinth had come to do what? Doubt the resurrection. Don't do that, he says. It's going to happen. Where are all those people that heard that message in 1 Corinthians, the 1 Corinthian letter? You can live your life knowing it's going to happen. Where are all they today? They're dead. Does that mean that the resurrection wasn't real and that they shouldn't live in anticipation of the resurrection? The answer is no. But there are things that have to be before that day. And just because we can't see those things does not mean that we are not progressing toward that day. So do not lose heart. Do not grow weary in well-doing. In due time, you will reap if you do not grow weary. That's the message of the scriptures. Don't allow yourself to start believing that because you can't see the progress, that the progress isn't real. So Daniel is having this vision and being given this information about various things. And what we're going to get into in chapter 11 is Persia, Greece, and the kings of the north and the south. Okay, those are the things that are covered. But I want you to notice verses 1 and 2. As for me, in the year of Darius the Mede, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. I'm going to stop right there. In the year, or the first year of Darius the Mede. Have we heard that time marker before? Is this before or after the third year of Cyrus? It's before. Go back to chapter 9. In the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, a descent by descent of Mede, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. This goes back to a statement about what he had been doing years before the events that are now taking place. The same time frame that chapter 9 was speaking about. He has a flashback regarding here in chapter 11. He says, as for me, when it comes to me, this was going on. In the third year of Cyrus, I have this vision, I have this conversation, and I'm learning. But as for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a fourth shall be far richer than all of them. So he's getting this information, and he's being told, hey, years ago I was there strengthening the king at the time. And there's still stuff going on. I'm going to show you the truth. 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a fourth shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. And so he's giving Daniel some markers. He said, look, going back to the beginning of this process, when Darius was first ruling, I was there with Darius. And there's going to be what? 3 more kings that arise in Persia. And then there'll be a fourth king that arises who's richer than all those 3. And once his riches begin to give him power, he's going to start creating issues for Greece. And so what we're talking about here is the political unrest and development that takes place over these years. And telling Daniel, this is what has to happen before what I really have in store is going to happen. That also tells us that what is the main focus of this revelation is not the restoration to Jerusalem of those people, because we already know that that happens during the time frame that we're in. He's saying, look, there's three more kings, and then there's Greece and an issue with Greece that comes up. And by the way, who ends up winning that conflict? Greece. And this all goes back to earlier visions to Nebuchadnezzar, right? Where you've got the Babylonians and then the Medes and the Persians, and then Greece identified as coming after them. So he's saying, look, There's still things playing out, but what is the real end of all of those visions to Nebuchadnezzar? Is it about an earthly kingdom? No, it's about a kingdom made without hands. And so don't get lost in the geopolitical stuff. The geopolitical stuff is being given to give us an awareness of the progress toward God's kingdom, of which there shall be no end. All they are the clouds in the background to give us a sense of motion. A mighty king shall arise, verse 3, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. This sounds quite familiar to me in terms of the little horn. Remember the beast with the horns, and then the little horn arose? As soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the four winds of the heaven. There was an aspect of those visions that we covered a couple of chapters ago. The same thing happens. There are four horns, not just one. The four winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, nor according to the authority which he has ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these. And so it's going to be divided, but in the end, his posterity doesn't get to keep the kingdom. What's going to happen to the kingdom? It's going to be given yet to somebody else still. Then the king of the south shall be strong. Now, well, let's talk about verses 2 through 4 real quick before we get into this section. Persian kings. Gabriel identifies three kings of Persia, and a fourth they'll be richer and stir up opposition to Greece. The Greek Empire, a mighty king arises, verse 3. His kingdom is eventually divided into four parts, not toward his descendants ultimately. Historical precision. If you go back through the historical record, this is the way it unfolded. This is what happened. And since the prophecy accurately traces the succession of the empires, the history, then we ought to have confidence that it's also accurate in what? The stuff that is telling us about this kingdom not made with hands, that will be eternal, that will never be destroyed. It's right about what it said about the earthly kingdom, so we need to have confidence that it's also right about everything else it's saying. That's the way that that reliability works, correct? If someone proves to be reliable about the things that they're telling you, and you see them reliably happen, then when they tell you something else, what do? You believe them. So we know that, for instance, weathercasters are never 100% correct. Okay, we know that. But we all have a favorite weathercaster that we follow. Why don't we follow that guy, whoever it is? Because we believe he seems to be right more often than the rest of them. And so we believe that he has some better skill or more information or whatever it may be that gives him that advantage, that he has that, and that the information that he's telling us about what's going to happen tomorrow is closer to what's going to happen tomorrow than the information this other guy is telling us, because this other guy is wrong more. That's how reliability works. And by the way, that's the same argument that Paul makes in 1 Corinthians 15 for the resurrection, right? How do we know that the promise of our resurrection is real? Because Christ was raised. And since now we know Christ was raised, then we should have confidence, because the same one that told us that Christ would be raised promised us what? that we too will be raised. And so it's just reliability. And so when we look through these things and we say, yeah, history bears this out, then understand that that is just another level of confidence that we can place in the things that can't be seen that we're being told about. And remember that the beginning of this chapter started off again with a historical marker. This king in this year with this stuff going on, and then this statement, I stood to confirm and strengthen him. Anybody see the angel do that? No. Why should I believe that the angel was there, involved, confirming and strengthening that king? Because the same angel that said, this is what's going to happen, and it did, is the one who said, I was there and I was strengthening and confirming him at the time. So that's what's going on here, is we're being given reasons to believe the testimony and reasons to interpret it as being reliable and trustworthy. I will also add that the Bible, as specific as it proves to be, is also very general and even vague a lot of times in its presentation at the time, which is what's fixing to happen. We're fixing to talk about the kings of the north and the south. And you know what we're never told? Who they are. We're not told any names of who they are. We're not told an exact time. We're not told even an exact kingdom. Just a general direction. The kings from the north and the kings from the south. And I think there's a reason for that. We'll talk about that as we go on. But let's pick up the reading in verse 5. The king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he, and he shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority. After some years, how many years is some years? Okay, more than one. That's a good answer. More than one. But could be what? Could be 1,000. We don't know. Now, it's probably not 1,000 if it's talking about an actual individual rather than a dynasty, because an actual individual don't live that long, but dynasties can. So without more specific information, we've got to be very careful about making assignments about these things. He shall not run, let's see where I'm at. After some years, they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to make agreement, but she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure, but she shall be given up, and her attendants, he who fathered her, and he who supported her in these times, and from a branch, from her roots, shall one arise in his place. All right, this is all this is saying, to put this in shorthand, is at some point the daughter of the king of the south is going to rise up, but she's not going to continue to hold her strength, and she's not going, and the person that she marries from the north, he's not going to either. But who's going to end up with the power? One of her descendants, from a branch from her roots. And by the way, that same language is used to talk about who? Jesus. He's a branch or a root that springs up from Jesse. And on his shoulders shall the kingdom come to rest. So this is not unique language. So it's just simply saying that one of her descendants shall arise in her place, or in his place, actually. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he shall deal with them and shall prevail. So eventually, the descendant of the king of the south is going to overpower the king of the north. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold, and for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. So the king of the north is going to come down into the south, but he's going to end up going back up to the north. His son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again shall carry the war as far as his fortress. The king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the king of the north, and he shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted. He shall cast down tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail. For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude greater than the first. And after some years, he shall come on with a great army and abundant supplies. And this is the plot of every war movie in history. That's what strikes me. You got these two great kingdoms. They're struggling with one another. They even connect for a while. And then one raises up and it gets power over the other. The other one raises an army and gets power over them. Then the other one comes up and it's just going back and forth. The struggle is ongoing. The king of the north shall rise again, a great multitude greater than the first, and after some years he shall come on with a great army and abundant supplies. And in those times many shall rise against the king of the south, and the violent among your own people shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. What's he saying to Daniel is that in this struggle, eventually the Jews themselves are going to get involved, but the side that they're on is not going to prevail. And the king of the north shall come and throw up siege works and take a well fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not stand, or even his best troops, for there shall be no strength to stand. But he who comes against him shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his hand. I'm going to take the position that the glorious land refers to the promised land. That's the only sense I can make out of it, at least. He shall set his face to come with the strength of his whole kingdom, and he shall bring terms of an agreement and perform them, and he shall give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand or be to his advantage. Afterward, he shall turn his face to the coastlands, shall capture many of them, but a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him. He shall turn his face back toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and he shall not be found. Then shall rise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle. Anybody want to throw out there who this is talking about, what this is all about? Do you notice what I'm talking about? Never once are we given enough information to say, this is what this is. This is who this is. There's a whole lot of information, though, about the struggle, such that we can do what? We can see things in it. Go ahead.
This is where a lot of people in different denominations will often teach false things like this in connection to specific history, and that's continued to be taught, and it gets further and further away.
Absolutely. Here's scholars, by the way. Series of conflicts between the king of the south. You know, scholars say this is likely talking about Egypt and the Ptolemaic period. So the Ptolemies. And the king of the north is the Seleucid line. And the struggle between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, we know the history. Marriages, alliances, deceit, warfare, all detailed out here. The prophecy anticipates interference with the Holy Covenant, with persecution of the saints, all that fits the story of the Ptolemy and the Seleucid struggle. Language is highly detailed, highly precise, but the fulfillment is inferred from history because the text itself doesn't explicitly say. You know who else it sounds like to me? The history of Rome and the history of Great Britain and the history of every other great kingdom that has arisen and come to prominence and then had enemies and then struggled between the enemies and then tried to solve it through diplomatic means, tried to solve it through war, tried to solve it through all sorts of things. And then eventually one comes out on top and the other fades away to nothing. And then eventually the one who came out on top himself fades away. That is the story of every great government that has ever arisen. Yes, sir. Right. And I think that there is a reason that we're not given specific information because it's not intended to reflect a particular historic event, but rather stands for all similar historic events. And what we learn from this is that even when political forces seem chaotic, what is behind it? Remember where this started. Remember verse 1. It's extremely important. We read past it because we think it's just setting a time. But he says, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. Behind all of this, who raises governments and who puts them down? God. That is something to remember. That's something to build your life on. And that's also something that should give us very, very, very careful cause before we raise attacks against the authorities which God have raised. Does he have a reason for bringing them into power? Does he have a reason for letting them reign? Does he have a time in which he's going to remove them? And the answer to all those questions is yes. I don't want to end up fighting against him. Remember the line in here that said your own people will rise up and going to fight with this king, but you're going to be on the losing side. Why were they to be on the losing side? Because it wasn't the one that God wanted to win. We got to be careful about making certain that we don't start fighting against God in what we do. And the immediate application for Daniel is be patient and wait. I know what I'm doing. When it's time, you will be restored. Don't push it. I'll make it happen. All right, got to stop there. Lord willing, we will pick up in verse 21 next time.
I am weak, but thou art strong. Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk, dear Lord, close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea.